What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow, happy new year. Happy 2022. Since we haven't seen you all since the end of Survivor season 41, but because we are now on the Survivor hiatus, we are going to be talking about Survivor challenges that we want to see back on Survivor. So, my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and we thought long and hard about these challenges, about which ones we would like to see back. We have 8 total that we think are excellent and should come back. Let us know in the comments down below before you watch this what you think we're going to say, because I feel like some of our opinions are really popular opinions that people are going to want to see back. So, yeah, let us know in the comments what you think we're going to say, and we're going to get started.
And I
So,
just feel like Survivor challenges, they're getting sort of stale. Every single challenge, it's basically a mixture of, okay, some kind of obstacle course and some kind of puzzles. So let's switch it up. We got to bring back some of the stuff from the golden days, the good old days. And hopefully, Survivor can implement some of these things.
yeah, I feel like some of them were taken out just because they aren't interesting TV, but it's like, it's not interesting TV? Watching the same challenge over and over with just slight variations on it. That's my
Yeah.
hot take.
Oh my gosh, literally. It's a swimming or obstacle, run over some A-frames, do some puzzle after you climb up some things, untie some rope, and then you're done.
Yep, that's the formula. So the first challenge that I want to see come back is I think they've done it several times. The official name of this challenge is Last Gasp, and basically it's when the castaways are underwater underneath the metal frame and they have their mouth and their nose above the water, and then as the tide comes in, the water slowly creeps up higher and higher until eventually they can't breathe anymore. And I feel like this challenge is really interesting because there's a lot of really innovative stuff that people do, like having a breathing tube. It's really, some castaways have said, like a mind over matter type thing, where you're going to feel like you're drowning a lot sooner than you're actually in danger of drowning. And so it's like you got to get the psychological element, you have to have the physical element, because sometimes it comes down to just who can hold their breath longer after the tide does rise all the way up. So I feel like it's a really interesting challenge, and it's also kind of one of those challenges that's really anybody's game. Like it's not something where you have to be the strongest or the smartest to win. So I really like
I
this challenge.
I agree. I want to see this challenge come back. We haven't really seen it in recent seasons of US Survivor. In some of the foreign iterations of Survivor, we have seen versions of this challenge as well. And I think it's always so fun to watch. Like, this is one of those challenges that I would want to participate in if I were on Survivor, just to see like how good you could be at it. Because, like Alyssa said, it's not like, oh, you have to be super fit or strong or smart at puzzles to be able to win this, but like you just can't really have a fear of water and stuff like that. And so like for me, competitive swimming growing up, I would want to try out this challenge. And it's just cool to see like how far people are willing to push themselves, which for some of the other challenges that we have on our list, like an endurance challenge or challenges similar, it's cool to see how far the contestants are willing to go in order to win immunity, rather than, okay, can you balance? Can you do a puzzle? Like, let's see people push themselves.
Exactly.
So, the next challenge that we have that we want to see come back would be the kinds of challenges where you have to cause some drama in the tribe. So one example would be the Touchy Subjects Challenge, where you get some questions, you have to write down an answer, which is typically a name of someone else on your tribe, and then Jeff is like, okay, here are the questions again, but you now have to guess who the majority of the tribe thought got this answer for the question. And so I always like these challenges because it causes a lot of tension and drama in the tribe, especially for questions like who doesn't deserve to be here anymore or who's the most annoying in the camp. Like that causes problems for everyone there. And there's a lot of like different dimensions of this challenge where do you purposefully get the answer wrong because you don't want to say so and so doesn't deserve to be here because you don't want them to get pissed off at you? Or do you answer the question correctly, how you think everyone else on your tribe has said the answer, so that you can get like an extra point to chop the rope? That kind of thing. So I think there's so many different ways to play this challenge, whether you're doing it truthfully or strategically, that it makes it so interesting and it just causes drama, which is fun and it can change up the game.
I also feel like one of the things that we've talked about a little bit in Modern Survivor is how like social game isn't appreciated as much as it used to be. Like a lot of players who play like a more low key, strong social game, like don't get as much TV time. They don't get as much like praise from the jury because it's like I said, a more low key game. And I feel like this is one of the challenges where someone with a good social game could dominate, and then later on, like if they do get to final tribal council, look back and be like, remember this challenge where I knew everything that was going on? Like I had my finger on the pulse of the game the whole time. Like I knew what everyone thought about each other. So
Yeah, and even cause problems within the camp if someone gets one of those negative questions that, oh, who's the biggest goat on the team? And then the person that got the most votes for that didn't actually realize how they were being perceived as someone who doesn't deserve to be there or the biggest goat on the team. So it could maybe push someone to try to make a move, try to switch up their position because they didn't realize that nobody liked them until that challenge.
yeah, so I just think it's really interesting. I like it. So the next challenge that we have has been done pretty recently. It was done in second chances at the final four. It's the Semotion challenge. And basically it's the challenge where there's that like twisty ball track and you have to keep multiple balls going through the track at the same time. You have one hand tied behind your back. If you drop any of the balls, then you're out. And I feel like this is kind of similar to Last Gasp, where I like it because you don't necessarily have to be like strong or fast or anything. You just have to have a good sense of pacing of like, okay, when am I putting the balls down the chute? And you have to have good focus to know which track the ball is going down. But it's really one of those things where it's anybody's game. And I like challenges that aren't like crazy, like skewed to one side or another. So I like this challenge. I think it's also interesting to watch because there's always something to watch. Like you can always be watching the contestants like moving their balls around. Like it doesn't just have to be you staring at them standing on a ledge. So
I agree. I think this challenge is interesting. And usually, when it's at, final four, final three, it causes a lot of tension because it is something that is do or die for a lot of people when they are either going to get voted out if they lose this or not. And I think another like iteration of this challenge would be in Australian Survivor Champions versus Contenders 2. They did it at the final four where instead of just like okay you're standing in one spot and you have to put balls in at certain times and then catch all the balls, they added a stair element to it, so you also had to run up the stairs, drop a ball in, it goes through the maze, and then you catch it at the end. And so that could make it a little bit more difficult and more spicy, but also you do have to be more physical rather than in the US version where you're just standing in one spot catching the balls. Now you have to add that stair element, so if you aren't like good with your fitness or being able to run up and down the stairs a bunch, that can make it a lot more challenging. So I think, US Surviving can take a lot from the Australian Survivor challenges because I feel like Australian Survivor, they have so many amazing challenges that are different from what we've seen in the US version.
yeah, I don't think I would want the US version to incorporate the stairs element just because if you are doing it at like the final four, that is like they've been out on the island for so long. They are so tired. Let them rest, you know? So, because I feel like sometimes the physical challenges towards the end, I just feel bad for them because they're obviously so exhausted and malnourished. And it's like, let them be.
It definitely adds a different element having those stairs in there because it's not just let me stick the balls in and time it, but also stick the balls in, but now you're tired of going up the steps. But it was only like 3 or 4 steps, so not like 10 million steps in between each round.
Okay, I was imagining like one of those really long staircases that they do sometimes. So,
So short amount of steps, but the next challenge that we would want to see more of would be the like physical wrestling kinds of challenges. So similar to challenges like we've seen in Heroes versus Villains, their opening challenge where they have to run and get the sandbags and then wrestle to get their sandbags to their mat, or like in Heroes versus Villains, they had a challenge where they were on like a mud pit on an area and then you have to wrestle for the bag over mud. I think those challenges are always so much fun to watch people like get down and dirty. How can they fight it out in these challenges? We've seen sort of a similar kind of physical wrestling challenge in Winners at War, their opening challenge where they have to get the ring in the water, and that had some wrestling. But I feel like when we were recapping Winners at War, the premiere episode, there was some issue with like the tides in the water where it made one team's easier to get through to because of how the water was moving. So I feel like if we're doing water wrestling challenges, you can't have the waves coming in or the tide supposedly helping one team over the other. But I love these wrestling challenges. They're always so much fun to watch, and it's like it's just fun TV to see people get down and if they're willing to fight it out to win like reward for their team.
yeah, and like I kind of understand why Survivor has phased them out just because they don't want to be liable for injuries and stuff like that. But I feel like if they found a way to do it like safely, like even something that's like flag football esque, I feel like would be fun where they have to like chase each other down, where it's not just, they're two separate teams doing two separate things. Because I feel like that also makes for interesting dynamics come the merge because it's like here's the people you were wrestling with like 10 days ago. Now you have to make friends with them. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I feel like some of the foreign versions of Survivor, we still see wrestling physical challenges. In the preview for the upcoming Australian Survivor season that Sandra is on, they're showing Sandra and her daughter fighting in one of these like challenges where they have to get a ring from one another. So I'm like, in a blood versus water season where you have to go up and like wrestle against your partner, significant other person, like that's going to cause so much drama. Do you let your significant other win? Or do you try to win? So it's like Sandra says she's going to beat her daughter in these challenges, but that could send your daughter's tribe to tribal council where she might get voted out. So I think having these challenges, especially where you're going one on one wrestling up against another person, can cause a lot of tension for blood versus water seasons or not. But yeah, I think US Survivor hasn't done them recently because of all of the touching and the liability. So maybe we won't see it anymore, but it's just so much fun to watch.
Another challenge that's really fun to watch and I'm so upset they phased it out is the Survivor auction. And I feel like one of the reasons that the Survivor auction like should come back is it's so much fun to watch them like bid with each other. Like their lives depend on whether or not they get a slice of chocolate cake. Like I still think about the Micronesia like Survivor auction all the time and how Eric paid Sari to like lick her fingers. Like peak television. But I feel like the one thing that kind of like held the Survivor auction back for a really long time was the fact that people would just save all of their money for the end for an advantage. And so I think that if they bring the Survivor auction back, they should do something where it's like just a food auction or like there will be no like advantage reward or something. And I guess that might be hard to implement just because I'm not sure that they would believe Jeff at least the first time just because Jeff has a habit of going back on his word. Cough, cough, hourglass, cough, cough. But yeah, I feel like a food only Survivor auction would be really fun, and I would want them to like eat snails or something. So
I agree. Having a food oling auction would be so fun. Like, we just see it in other versions of Survivor where they have only food kind of thing. And it's just fun to watch people fight over, oh, let me get some French fries or a milkshake because everyone is so hungry. So I think it's just fun to see people like wanting to get those food, and the food low-key looks really good a lot of the times, like having the whole dessert platter or having the big steak and burger platter. It's like, oh, that's so interesting, because it's like I wouldn't necessarily crave that in real life, but after watching it on TV and seeing people fight for it, I'm like, oh, maybe I want like a big steak or dessert plate now, because after seeing them it looks so good. So I do think they do need to get rid of the whole advantage, so people don't just save their money, and just make it a fun little segment. Like, okay, there's only the auction can close at any time. Some people might not get any. There's only food. There could be good food options, but there could also still be the bad food options where two things are covered and you can choose to stay or switch. Or you might just get like a bowl of rice at the auction because of something you bought. So I think you could make it fun still. You could get a bad food item, you could get a good food item. There's just nothing to save your money for. No like family letters or anything. No advantage in the next immunity challenge. Just make it solely food. Then it would be so fun to watch.
Exactly.
So, speaking of food, the next challenge that we want to see return would be a food reward challenge where for the reward, you get to go and eat some kind of food, but only one person gets sent in to eat the food at a time. So, US Survivor, we've seen it in Heroes, Healers, Hustlers in their spaghetti challenge, where on the plate of the spaghetti, there's actually a clue for an idol. And so, this is just so much fun. We've also seen this kind of challenge in like Australian Survivor. Keep on bringing Australian Survivor up because their challenges are just really, really good. And so I feel like it's become a staple of Australian Survivor where they have one of these reward food challenges every season. And it has led to some like super, super amazing TV moments, like the popcorn challenge, where one contestant goes in, dumps all the popcorn, and finds an idol in there, and then no one else really questions why all the popcorn is on the floor. And so now in Australian Survivor, whenever this challenge comes up, people literally go wild in the food area. They are like putting their hand in every single cake, like cutting all the cakes in half to look for an idol or an advantage, like licking all of the desserts to see if there's anything in there, like just dumping all the milk on the ground. Like it's so hectic because people are expecting something to be there that they just like ruin all of the food, and they're the first person to go in. So you think, oh, it'd be pristine when I go in there next, but no, all the food is like everywhere. So I think those challenges are just so fun to watch, and they're not like high stakes. They already won the challenge and this is their reward, so they can go wild and eat whatever food they want and maybe find an advantage.
The thing is, I liked the version that they did in US Survivor better, where they only had the one plate of spaghetti and they had to like share it amongst themselves. And I just think that like brings in so many like social politics where like if you're the person who like is second to last, you know that you need to like leave a portion of pasta for the person who comes after you or something like that. And like Dean being absolutely stupid and like not, was it Dean? I think it was Dean. Someone. But
I'm like, what season are you talking about now?
I don't know. The name Dean came to my head, but someone was dumb and like instead of hiding the clue, just like put it back where it was. And it's like, bro, you don't do that. So I think it was Dean. I feel like Dean is
probably Ryan, another 4-letter name. Dean was not that season.
But I feel like they did it on Dean season 2. I don't know. I'll look it up while you're talking about our next one. But like, it was wild.
Yeah, I could see both versions of the challenge. They probably wouldn't have both on one season, but if you switch off like every other season where you have one season where it's like one plate of food and you have to figure out how to share it amongst like 8 people on your team, or like Australian Survivor, you have a bunch of plates of food and people get sent in one by one. And there is some strategy with that version as well, similar to the US version, because the people on the team, they get to pick the order of how everyone gets sent in to go eat the food. So it's sort of like, oh, do you draw rocks? Do you pick sticks? as like a fair way to send people in, or do you try to finagle your way? If you know you're on the bottom, you want some kind of clue or advantage, do you try to say, hey, I'm going first, try to get in there so you're the person to find the advantage, which might alienate your tribe mates and they're going to be like, no way, dude, like you're not going in there first, kind of thing? Or do you just let it be to chance and draw some sticks or rocks to be sent into the reward?
It was Cole who did this. So it was a 4-letter name, and I feel like Dean and Cole were basically like the same archetype. So I
That's
don't
Dean,
fault
Cole,
this.
Ryan, all 4-letter names.
They all like kind of look the same. I guess Ryan looks different, but anyways, Cole like found a clue and then was dumb about it. But yeah, I feel like the social politics are amazing. The whole like having a reward hidden or not having a reward hidden and watching people go crazy looking for a reward, like peak television.
I agree. They should just bring this one back. It's so much easier. If they're not doing an auction with just food, just bring the food reward challenge back in. Like it's similar. It's fun.
Yeah. So another one that I guess isn't as fun, but I feel like is a classic staple that I personally have missed is like really long endurance challenges where they're just up there for forever. I feel like there's been a trend in Survivor to make their endurance challenges like more difficult so they don't last for as long. And I'm like, no, let's make them be out in the hot sun for 14 hours straight. Let's do it. I feel like my favorite challenges were like the one that they did um, in Micronesia where they had their hand above their head and if they moved their hand, the water poured down on them. The one final three challenge that was just them holding or touching a post. And it was like so ridiculously simple because all they had to do was stand there with their hand on a post. And yet it was so difficult for them. So I feel like it's one of those things where you really want to see how far people will push themselves because at some point an endurance challenge becomes a matter of mind over matter again where it's not like, oh, can I physically do this? It's, can I mentally do this?
I 100% agree. Like Survivor Borneo, Survivor Palau, having those long ass endurance challenges are so fun to watch. US Survivor recently, we've seen them stray away from these challenges, like in the most recent Survivor 41. They're saying, hey, this challenge, we're making it harder. The foot stumps are smaller. You know, you have to raise your hand or stand on your tiptoes now. Like, they're just making it harder so it lasts a shorter amount of time due to like restraints in like cameras and production and stuff like that, which okay, I guess that makes sense, but also it's like in those previous seasons of Survivor where we've seen people push themselves and even recently in David versus Goliath, like that is fun. How long can people stand on the post? How long can people touch an idol? How long can people hold their hand above their head to win the individual immunity? And Australian Survivor, we've seen usually in their like final immunity challenge, they have some kind of endurance challenge like this. We've seen them do like a similar kind of like they've done the Borneo challenge. They've done like standing on some kind of like foot hole, like foot things that hurt your feet, whole touching totems, idols, stuff like that. It's like high key looking like torture chambers that they got them strapped into to do endurance challenges with. But it's so interesting, especially for a final immunity. Like, how many hours are these people willing to stand to guarantee their spot in the finale? So it's just so much fun to watch. I do really wish US Survivor would bring those back rather than like, hey, we're making the challenge harder. Let's get it done in 15 minutes. Like, stay out there for 5 hours. Let's see it.
It's funny because it feels like Jeff makes the challenges harder, but then he also like is like, you only lasted for 5 minutes, and it's like you can't make the challenge harder and then also rag on them for not lasting as long. Like, come on.
I feel like we talked about this during Survivor 41 too. It's like, yeah, you can't just bully them saying, why do you suck so much? Like, so and so did it for 30 minutes. You last 30 seconds, but it's like the foot posts are smaller or you have to
The
stand on
rules
your
are different.
tiptoes. Yeah. Like, just make it regular length so people can go a long time rather than trying to change the challenge a little bit to make it more difficult.
Exactly.
And so the final challenge that we want to see Survivor do more of would be local trivia challenges. And so I guess now, since they're still in Fiji, they could do Fijian history or other kinds of histories of the area. Some examples from recent Survivor would be in Survivor Second Chance with that nighttime challenge that they had where they had to run around and answer trivia questions. So, like, stuff like that is interesting. I just think it's so cool to learn about the history of the places that Survivor goes to, as well as making it some kind of physical challenge like the Second Chance challenge. You really test people, like, do they know their history of where they're at? And like the big moment of Steven tricking Abby Maria with like picking up the lid and then she takes the wrong answer and then he puts the lid down and then takes the right answer to the question. It's like things like that where you wouldn't think, oh, a trivia challenge can be fun and interesting, but when you're tricking people like that, trivia challenges can be fun and interesting.
Yeah, I thought the way they did it in Cambodia was really neat. I really liked that they did the challenge at night as well. That added to some of like the ambiance. Like I just think Cambodia had a lot of banger challenges. So
I agree. I'm like Australian Survivor challenges, just so good. The old US Survivor challenges, really good. And even like the Survivor South Africa challenges that we've seen, like those are pretty good as well. So it's like, dang, so many good challenges.
yeah, exactly. So these were the 8 challenges that we would like to see come back to Survivor. We would love to hear if you guys have more challenges that you would like to come back to Survivor. Also, were your guesses that you put before we started talking correct or incorrect? Because we want to know whether or not we're on the same wavelength or if you guys thought of something that we totally missed or anything else that you want to say to us. So, remember to like and subscribe and do all of those other like YouTubey things. We're planning on doing some sort of visit to our favorite sit down restaurant the next time that we hit a subscriber milestone. So if you want to see an Applebee's mukbang, you have to subscribe. So we will see you guys next week with more Survivor hiatus content. And yeah, have a great weekend.